So today has been a particularly slow day at work. I've been killing time reading these stories. Maybe enough time has passed, and I can finally share mine. I had a friend who was really into the occult. Unfortunately, I was the one who got him turned on to it. We had a mutual appreciation of the paranormal and all of things weird, so I thought the subject would interest him. He started going really deep into the subject, to the point he wouldn't talk about anything else. He would actually interpret a conversation and force the subject back to occult matters. Rude, but sometimes people would go through phases where their interest is all they want to talk about. It was a mostly forgivable offense. I should also mention that this particular friend didn't have a very large friend circle. His depression and introverted nature kept him inside a lot. He didn't exactly have the best luck with relationships and women. His world was kind of small, and I did enjoy hanging out with him, so I did my best to just be a good friend to him. And I didn't want to just brush him off because he was acting a little weirder than normal. Honestly, for the longest time, he was a total normal guy. We'd chat and play games together on the PlayStation. Sometimes we'd even go see movies. We all hung out at the park. We went swimming. Overall, we just had a good time hanging out. Things began to go downhill when he started to smoke DMT. Personally, I think psychedelics are an amazing tool that can offer insight into your life. They should be treated with respect. My friend got to the point where he was making himself and almost smoking it daily, multiple times a day. For those of you who aren't familiar with the substance, when you smoke it, you get transported to a different world, an entirely new plane of existence. Your body and yourself don't exist anymore. You're just exploring this alternate reality dreamscape. My personal experience, it led me to seeing a dragon once in this kaleidoscope of a cornucopia. People see all kinds of things and different things when using it. Imagine what this does to a person when they're smoking it 30 plus times a day. He started to tell me things like he was the reincarnated Osiris. He said he was seeing Egyptian hieroglyphs all over the place in waking life. Apparently, he had an hour-long conversation with entities in his bedroom, even when he wasn't smoking DMT. Of course, I was very alarmed to hear all of this, and I told him he needed to take a serious break from it. No drugs at all for a few months so we can find solid footing inside reality again. It was at this point I was still hanging out with him because he obviously needed help. And like I said before, he didn't have a lot of friends that could give him that. He was also the black sheep of his family, so I knew he wasn't getting any form of support from them. He was actually really close to his sister, and I did reach out to her on Facebook to express my concerns. I pushed her to talk to him into getting some help because he was slipping past the point of no return. I'm not really sure if she took my messages seriously since we really didn't know one another. Plus, she's at least 6 years younger than us and possibly didn't grasp how serious this situation was becoming. In any case, I'll jump forward now to the part of my story where things start to get really creepy. My boyfriend had made arrangements to hang out with our friends at the park. I really didn't want to go. I felt like I needed a break from him and his nonsensical ranting. I just couldn't deal with it on that particular day. My boyfriend convinced me that he wasn't all that bad, so we went anyway. When we get to the park, he's his usual self, ranting about Egypt and made-up gods that only he knew the truth about. He also had this large hunting knife that he kept fiddling with the whole time we were on a walk. He told us that he'd been using it in ceremonial magic, and it helped him banish negative thoughts. It made me extremely uneasy. He would do this thing where he'd take the knife and make stabbing motions near his heart or his head, like he was mock stabbing himself, all the while holding a conversation with me or my boyfriend. I think we were really both on edge at this point, and I really didn't know what to say or do about it. I tried to distract him from doing it by bringing up other subjects, things that might interest him, but he kept on talking about his ritual. Keep in mind we were walking on a trail, so it wasn't like we could just say goodbye then and there. We had to walk back to our car and drop him off at his. So my boyfriend had the bright idea that we should get lunch after our walk, even though I was doing my best to give him the look that said, "No, you crazy. Why do you think I want to spend any more time with this nut?" But it must not have been very effective, or my boyfriend was just ignoring it. Not sure either way. We ended up getting in the car and going out to lunch. In the car as I was driving, my boyfriend was in the passenger seat and our weirdo friend was in the back. As we're heading through a busy part of town where all the shopping and restaurants are, I hear the distinctive sound of a belt buckle coming undone. Then I hear the worst sound imaginable. Peek out the corner of my eye and my suspicions were confirmed. This crazy fucker was full on jacking off in our back seat. I mean pants all the way down, bare ass on the seat. Beating it so hard it was like he was trying to rip it off. Instantly I felt sick to my stomach, and all that nervous energy I had throughout the day popped into my head. I was trying not to shake and tried to ignore it and just continue driving through the heavy traffic. I guess I had a kind of freeze response. The whole time I kept thinking about that huge ass knife he had in his pocket. He was obviously completely off his rocker now. I was afraid to say or do anything or confront him because I didn't know how he would react. This part is nuts, and my boyfriend didn't even seem to notice. And the whole time he just kept rambling on about God knows what. I couldn't listen because my thoughts were 100% focused on driving and trying to act like I didn't know what was going on in my back seat. I get into the restaurant and my boyfriend runs inside to grab food. I'm left all alone in the car with that friend. I try to act like I'm browsing on my phone when really I'm watching and listening as hard as I can. No one says a word. My boyfriend gets back and I complain that I'm tired. It's been a long day. Let's drop him off, etc. So I drive us back to our friend's car, and he doesn't get out of the vehicle. He just sits there. I have to get a little bit rude and ask him to please get out and go home. He gets out of his car and walks over to the passenger side. I start getting really scared and just suspected the worst. He then pulled a gun out of some kind of bag he had on a seat and just walks over to the car with it. I don't know why I did this, but I was just so pissed that I got out of my car and walked right up to him. I was maybe 3 feet away and I could see it was a loaded 9mm handgun. I kept asking him over and over, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Because apparently that's all my brain could think to do. I told him to get in his car and go home. During this entire process, he never says anything. He just kind of cries and had this wild look in his eye. For whatever reason, he got back into his car and just drove off. I told my boyfriend obviously we are never hanging out with him again, and that I didn't even want him to talk to him anymore. No contact, nothing. A few months pass, and he occasionally would message me through PlayStation or text my phone. He said a lot of random stuff, and I just completely ignore it. It turns out he moved down to Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know why. He had a roommate, and I think their girlfriend lived there as well. I'm not really sure about the entire situation. I'm thinking maybe he turned his life around, got a fresh start down there. I think it's best to cut all contact and let him regroup. I'm not interested in any kind of friendship with him, and I know he needed help beyond what I could offer him. Again, I reached out to his sister and let her know that he had a gun. She had managed to get it away from him, but somehow it did little to no good in the end. I get a call around 11 p.m. one night that woke me up. It's a man claiming that he's a detective down in Gallatin, Tennessee. My heart skips a beat. I start sweating and immediately ask what happened. Apparently, my former friend stabbed someone to death on Halloween Day. I don't know all the details, and the articles I found about it are kind of sparse. The whole thing is really surreal. Just left feeling lucky that I didn't get shot last summer. This whole thing turned out way longer than I meant it to be, but that's my story. I'm still feeling creeped out by the whole ordeal. I'm kind of sick after writing all of this. This is a long story, but it was so bizarre I feel like it's worth telling. I wanted to post it because this person recently tried to friend my now husband on Facebook. It brought back crazy memories, and I need to vent about it. I got married right at 18. I was a pretty book-smart kid, but lacked street smarts. And by the time I turned 20, my now ex-husband and I had moved onto a rental property in a pretty nice suburb area. In the basement of the house, there was a big mother-in-law suite, where a good male friend of ours lived as well. I was about halfway through nursing school at this time. This particular semester of nursing school, I had a very early clinical rotation once a week. I was 21 at the time. I'm not a morning person. So in order to maximize the amount of time I spent asleep, I started loading all my stuff into my car the night before. My bags, my books, and even my purse. One particular night before clinicals, I asked my ex-husband Bobby to get a book for my car. He goes out and does, but forgets to lock the door. The next morning when I get to my car, I note that my purse is now gone. So I end up filing a police report. I was mostly concerned because I had just gotten this new job as a nurse's aide at a hospital. I had my security card still sitting in my wallet. Almost immediately after that theft, strange things start to happen. We start getting ding-dong ditches at all hours of the day and night. Someone vandalized mine, Nick's, and Bob's cars with strange graffiti. Our house would be egged. Nick's tires got slashed. First, we chalked it up to neighborhood pranksters. But when we started having damages that cost me some decent money, called the police. Not to mention one day when Bob was mowing the lawn, he noticed piles of cigarette butts outside the bedroom window. The police came out and pretty much did nothing but take a report and told us to probably invest in car alarms and some brighter floodlights for the driveway. A few weeks after this, at 2:30 in the morning, I get a call on my cell. It was the police in a neighboring town. They had picked up someone who had my ID on him, someone named Craig. When they asked why he had someone else's ID on him, he claimed that I was his girlfriend. The cop called me because his name had popped up that I'd file a police report for theft. I assured the police that I'd never heard of him before, and was also told that I could pick up my ID at the police station within the next few days. Things really started to escalate at that point, but I still didn't make the connection that perhaps these incidents were related. I began to get strange messages on MySpace. This was 2009, as well as on Facebook, clearly from fake accounts with long-winded messages that made absolutely no sense. This person started messaging friends of mine as well, deleted MySpace and blocked the person on Facebook, but new accounts kept getting created more and more. Somehow this person got my email address, started sending me emails as well. I had no idea who this person could be. They seemed to know details about me that indicated that this was either someone I knew or knew someone that I knew. Messages weren't overtly threatening, but creepy enough to where I started becoming very uncomfortable. One night, my friend Lauren and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. Lauren's husband and a few other friends had gone out for the night. We were sitting around chilling when we hear something that sounds like someone shaking the garage door. We go out and check it. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. We've had occasional issues with raccoons, so I just chalked it up to that. But the noise keeps continuing. Lauren and I are getting freaked out at this point. Now understand the layout of the house. It was a modern style ranch house with no upstairs. The garage sounds moved now to the kitchen window. A distinct sound of someone scratching or knocking hard. We immediately call our husbands, who don't answer. And at this point, we debate calling the police. What if it is an animal or just tree branches? You don't want to seem stupid. As we debate this, I see Lauren's face go sheet white and look past me. I spin around and I can see the handle to our front door wiggling. We were seated near the kitchen, so we jump up. Lauren grabs a knife from the butcher block on the counter and I grab a small hammer from the trunk drawer. We book it to the back of the house where the bedrooms are, cell phone in hand, and lock the door behind us, and immediately call the police. The dispatcher tells us to stay on the line, move furniture in front of the door if possible. Police are on their way. We shove a dresser in front of the door, continuing with our knife and hammer in hands. And we agreed if he was going to come in, he might be bigger or stronger than us, but we're not going down without a fight. The cops finally show up, banging on the front door, shouting police. You can see the red and blue lights through the window. We leave the room and let the cops inside. They find no signs of anyone present or evidence of any attempted break-in. They take another report, and in the meanwhile, our husbands finally call us back, and they come home when the cops leave. Fast forward a few months later, a very close friend of ours, Sean, was renovating his apartment and needed a place to crash along with his girlfriend. Bob and I decided that he could stay in the third bedroom inside our house. The first night that Sean stayed with us, we're awakened at 2 a.m. by Sean screaming at someone. Bob and I jump out of bed and rush into the hall and into Sean's room. Sean and his girlfriend are wide awake, lights on, looking totally freaked out. The screen is sliced and flopping in the wind. Sean told us that he woke up to someone using what he thought was a knife on the screen and started climbing in through that window. Call the cops again. They come out and take a statement. Sean describes the guy as best as he could. White male, young looking, semi-shaved head with what looked like darker hair. The police dust for fingerprints and comes back as a match for, you guessed it, Craig J. Turns out I knew who he was, vaguely. He was a year younger than me. We'd gone to the same high school, but I couldn't remember having any significant interactions with him. He lived with his parents, only a few blocks away from my parents' house. Upon realizing that Sean had just moved in, the cop makes a statement that chilled us all. He probably didn't realize anyone was staying in this bedroom and thought the room would be empty. So the cops go there and arrest him. And he suddenly has quite the story for him. Him and I are secret lovers, and I was ignoring him. We had a relationship. He also had, quote unquote, been allowed into my home many times. I'm floored. He gets charged with something like trespassing or breaking and entering, and does light time for it, maybe a month tops, then has to pay a fine. In the meanwhile, I get a restraining order on him. When he gets out, I hear nothing from him. I also develop a completely irrational fear of first floor windows. Fast forward to Christmas of 2010. I'm now 23. I figured the whole Craig thing is in the past. Bob and I ended up divorcing, which was unrelated to this, and go our separate ways. And Nick has long since moved out. We end our lease, and I move to a less desirable suburb, but with a more affordable rent. I settle on an apartment in a 4-unit building that has a locked entrance, and the only way in was with a key or with someone opening the door from the inside. I lived on the 2nd floor. By this time, I graduated and was now a nurse, was working full-time at a nursing home. Spring, summer of 2011, it all started up again. Calls began coming to me at work, only to have that someone hang up. Letters suddenly appeared in the staff-only mailbox, mailed to me with no return address. Strange emails started up again from random accounts. Messages were never overtly threatening, but they were long, and way too frequent, and way too out there. He spoke to me as if we were long-lost friends and had some sort of connection. I don't think he ever threatened to hurt me, although cutting into the house with a knife, I really don't know what was going on through his head. What I kind of seemed to piece together over the years from all this rambling is he had some sort of crush on me when I was younger, and him happening to rob my car was some sort of sign from the universe or something that we were meant to be together. I call the police, and they basically tell me there's nothing they can do because there's been no threats. There's not much else they can do other than watch and wait. This continues on for a while, and finally, one night I wake up at 2 a.m. to the doorbell ringing. I'm instantly in a panic. I look out the window. There, illuminated in the floodlight, is Craig. I burst out crying in my half-awake state. I run across the hall and start banging on my neighbor's door. He was an older divorced guy who lived alone. He goes downstairs and confronts Craig, tells him the cops have been called, and Craig immediately takes off. I file a report, and they claim they will talk to him, but this only makes things get worse. Friends I have on Facebook are now starting to get random messages from him, asking about me, telling them that he has an important information for me. Other times he alternates saying that I owe him money and I have debt I need to pay off. My friends block him as he goes along. Meanwhile, my younger sister is living in the city with a few friends. He somehow finds out where and drives to her apartment and confronts her while she has people over. She freaks out. They kick him out and she calls the police, who basically do the same thing again. He didn't commit a crime, but offered to tell her to get a restraining order. Right after this, another incident occurs. My younger cousin is a high school senior on the cross-country team. He shows up at my cousin's practice. My cousin has no clue who he is, and he starts demanding information about me. The coach ended up getting involved, and Craig gets in a fight with him. Police are called, and he's banned from school grounds, but nothing more. He calls the nursing home administrator at my job, asking him to talk to me. and that he has important information to tell me. The administrator, who is fully aware of the situation, tells him not to come onto the property or he'll have him arrested for trespassing. At this point, I'm paranoid beyond measure, but then just as quickly as it started, it faded away. It's now summer of 2012. This is the final capper in this saga. I'm almost 25 now. A friend of mine named Stacy moves in with me temporarily while she looked for a place. She was dating a new guy and spent quite a few nights at his place. One day I picked up a double shift starting at 7 a.m. and ended at 11:30 p.m. Stacy texts me around 3:30 p.m. stating that she won't be home that night and was going out with her guy. I arrive home that night at almost midnight. The first thing I notice is that my door is unlocked. Uneasy, but thinking perhaps Stacy had just forgotten to lock it, cautiously peer inside. I pan my gaze into the kitchen and living room. I can't shake the feeling that I'm unsettled. Something wasn't sitting right with me. Due to all of these incidents, I've made sure that only 1 or 2 lights were on even when I wasn't home. I was still not fully in the door when I noticed that I was staring into the pitch black apartment, and immediately my brain went into full panic mode. I'm glad it did though. Realistically, Stacy could have forgotten to leave a light on, but my instincts were in overdrive and sounding off at least 5 alarm bells in my head. A Puerto Rican neighbor who lived down in the apartment units below me was known for his weekend parties, and I could hear one going on downstairs. I book it down the stairs and burst into the party and tell him what had just happened. He looks at me like I'm crazy, but agrees to come upstairs with me. We get inside and he looks around and we don't see anyone. Starting to wonder if maybe I am just nuts. Maybe Stacy had her boyfriend over and they left in a hurry, forgetting to turn on the low lights and lock the door. He agrees with me and sort of jokingly pulls open the pantry door. What I saw next will never leave my mind. There, crouched inside my pantry, is Craig. My neighbor puts the guy in a chokehold, and I call the police. To this day, I have no idea what he planned on doing next, but the cops came out and he's arrested. Because my neighbor was having a party, he had the door open to the alleyway, and chances are, he just walked into our building. And most likely, people would just assume that he was there for the party or whatever. It's more confusing how he got into my apartment itself, and my theory is, my roommate at the time was from the country, while I lived in a suburb. So we always locked our doors and generally kept everything secure as a rule. She was used to leaving her doors unlocked and wide open, and I think honestly it may have just slipped her mind when she went out the door for the night. I confronted her about it and she of course denied it. But that's really the only logical way he could have gotten inside. I always locked both the knob lock and the deadbolt whenever I left the house. Unless he was a skilled locksmith, I have no idea how else he could have gotten in. I didn't stay alone or go anywhere by myself for a long time after that. I feel like I may have actually developed a paranoia because of all of this, and was highly suspicious of giving my number or any information to anyone. He ended up being charged and convicted of aggravated stalking, breaking and entering, and some other charges. I ended up meeting his parents in court, who were both shockingly very normal and apologetic people. They tried explaining their son's behavior. They claimed he was mentally ill and suffered from bipolar disorder. When he's medicated, he's okay, but when he's off his meds, he's nuts. After he served time, I didn't hear from him for years, until 2016 when he found me on Facebook. I was much older now, around 29. I replied to him very firmly that any contact with me would end up in the police being called. I had no interest in him whatsoever. I blocked him instantly. Recently, he found my new husband on Facebook and friended him. My husband blocked him as well. To this day, I'm still paranoid. I had parked my car near a baseball diamond once, and some kid most likely hit a baseball into my windshield and took off because I had a perfectly baseball-sized spider crack on the glass. Despite it being completely logical that it most likely was, I instantly reverted back to, oh God, is it him? I have no idea what actually happened to him. I'm also now a total psycho about keeping things locked. I do have one of my acquaintances monitor him on Facebook, and from what I've seen, he appears to go through periods where he's pretty inactive, and then immediately have episodes where he's just rambling, overposting and oversharing, and acting generally deranged. I do believe his parents were telling the truth when they stated that when he's medicated, he's okay. Part of me does feel bad for him. I'm older now, been a nurse for almost 10 years, and some of which was time spent with a psych specialty. The mind is a hell of a thing. Looking back though, those were some of the worst years of my adult life. He put me through a lot of anxiety, caused a lot of issues for me. I slept with my couch pushed against my apartment door for 2 years before I moved out of there. I'm now married, but on nights where I'm home alone, I still find myself resisting the urge to stack furniture in front of my doors. Moral of the story, never leave your purse in your car, and always lock your doors. When I was much younger and far less concerned with consequences, I was introduced to a guy through a mutual friend that was well connected. It took me forever to figure out how this guy could stock a veritable roving pharmacy inside his vehicle, but at the time, I wasn't so much concerned with the how, just the when. Like, hey man, when can I purchase an irresponsible amount of prescription medications from you? As I got to know him more, I learned more about my purveyor of happy pills, and he thoroughly threw off a very bad vibe. I would do my very best to avoid the post-deal hangout. Eventually my dealer, and I'll henceforth refer to him as D, started making attempts to insulate himself into my group of friends more and more. He would call me constantly, text me like an abandoned Tinder date, and harass me to hang out. We would casually drink beer in the backyard of my house, and he'd happen to be in the neighborhood. Just like he'd accidentally take a load off and decide to stick around. I'm not a complete asshole, so it was difficult to sell someone a clue who doesn't have a proverbial nickel to his name. I specifically remember a night when each of us were recounting macho stories of tussles and scraps that we'd all been in, and D decided it was his turn to contribute. It went something like, "Oh, that's nothing, man. One time I shot a man in the face with a sawed-off shotgun and beat the rap on a self-defense technicality." We all sort of just went slack-jawed at the moment and nodded our heads, mumbling uncomfortably. "Wow, pretty cool." At that point, we all just assumed he was a one-upper and would say whatever to reinforce the tough guy persona he was so desperate to have us believe. I should have realized then that maybe D wasn't exactly an asset to the societal fabric. But, didn't want to hurt the guy's feelings, plus drugs. A few weeks later into that summer, some of the boys and I decided to tie one on and head downtown to the clubs. Now I know for a fact that I hadn't committed the sin of imparting knowledge to our physical location to D, but somehow he materialized by my side as I was ordering up a drink. Even in my own greatly impaired state, I could tell D was a knee-walking, gutter-sucking blackout. It took me all of 30 seconds of surveying his slack expression, coupled with those glassy black eyes doing that 1,000-yard stare, to surmise that D was not going to be a fun man to be around this night. My hypothesis soon proved to be all too accurate, and I began pushing random people on the dance floor, accosting women in front of their respective boyfriends and husbands, all while fiddling around in his pockets for something. Starting to get why D wasn't a pillar of social proficiency. Eventually he was ejected from the club, and as a mission of pure mercy, I went outside to make sure he at least found a cab home. And that's when I discovered what D was looking for in his pocket that whole night. As I walked outside, I could see several bouncers surrounding him. He was brandishing a fucking 6-inch serrated fold-out knife. I still have no idea to this day what possessed me to step in and corral him. I still believe that the only reason I wasn't about to get cut to ribbons was because of the Gumby-like flexibility that I'm afforded under the influence of alcohol and prescription meds. I was finally able to convince him into a taxi and send him packing home. At that point, I made a firm decision to stop doing drugs, and by my proxy, stop ever seeing D. Ever. I blocked his number and refused to go out, and it's very lucky that I did so, because a few months later, he found himself once again in a scuffle at that very same establishment. Only this time, I wasn't there to rescue him. He stabbed a man 7 or 8 times. hot-footed into an alley in some pitiful attempt at escape. The police didn't have to do much sleuthing. There were plenty of bystanders willing to point out his location. D is now in a level 4 prison and isn't eligible for parole for another decade or so. And I'd say, good. D, let's not fucking meet again. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk me on Instagram. All of these linky links are below. Hey everybody, what is going on? How are you? How is life? How is everything doing? I hope you like this episode. This is a good episode. Psycho stalkers, psycho exes, and stuff like that. Those people. All right, I'm done ASMR. I'm done ASMRing for you. In all seriousness, though, no jokey jokes, no silly sillies. The next episode is most likely going to be like Missing 411, Deep Woods, and stuff. A lot of you tend to like that, and those episodes have done really well on this channel in the past for me, so gonna put out another big, thick boy with probably 4 or 5 C's, and they will all be new stories too, so stories that you haven't heard at least on this channel. Also, I feel like I need to reiterate this for the billionth time to some of you in the comment section, and some of you who don't understand or are lost on this concept. If you listen to multiple narrators that narrate scary stories, if you listen to Let's Read, Southern Cannibal, Swamp Dweller, all these other channels, if you're listening to like 10, 12, 15, however many of these, even if you're only listening to 5, you are almost 100% guaranteed to hear duplicate stories. Okay? I know that's hard to fathom for some of you. I don't understand why, but if you listen to multiple channels, you are going to hear duplicate stories from us because A, we all pull the stories from the same locations for the most part. It's Reddit and user submissions. That's mostly it. And we're all searching on there and getting stories from there. So if you listen to multiple, if you listen, here, I'm going to say it slowly, really slow so you can really sit back and comprehend this, okay? All right? Okay, is that okay? Sit back, relax, here, I'll let you take a drink of water or something, whatever you got next to you real quick, and brace yourself for this because I need to say it one more time just so you guys understand it. If you, that's you listening, listen with your ears to multiple narrators on YouTube and their channels, you're gonna hear the same stories. Okay, is that okay? All right, I hope you understand this time because you don't seem to understand every time. That shocking, I know, oh yeah, oh, I heard that story before on the other channel. I've heard this story on the channel millions of times. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why can't you just have the same stories as the other channels? I'm done. That's the last time I'm going to say it. Most of the time I have a sense of humor for it, but it's really annoying to me. Really annoying. Okay? Okay? Yeah. All right, I'm going to end this long tirade, this long rant that 99% of you aren't even listening to anyway with, I got some big news. I'm not going to announce it yet, but it's going to be happening very soon, and I'm very, very excited. Yeah, so look forward to that. Look for the next episode here. Sunday, Monday will probably be the most realistic time when it'll come out. So just look out for that. All right, I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.